Hello there and welcome back to War Thunder, and today I want to have a discussion about the potential removal of the Panther II and the 10.5 centimeter Tiger II. And while we're at it, why not remove as well the Horten 229 and the Japanese R2Y2s, all three of them. And the funny argumentation being from an interview from apparently a Gaijin dev being historical accuracy. For me personally, this is just another brick in the wall, and this is just another step taken by Gaijin to ensure that German tanks are not fun. Not, unable to make them work on the battlefield, but not fun. And if we think about the long story of nerfing and making sure that German vehicles are not overperforming, this is just another step. And apparently the Panther II and the 10.5 centimeter Tiger II are too competitive. By the way, they are not in my books. They are below average, to be honest. In terms of mobility, the survivability, the firepower, the protection, they are mediocre at best. And let's begin with the Panther II. So what is unhistorical about this tank? Well, for all intents and purposes, it's the engine with 900 horsepower, giving this tank a horsepower to ton ratio of just under 17, which is okay, but not outstanding. And it has a much better reverse gear than the previous Panthers with minus 11 kilometers an hour, something like this, instead of minus 4. So you actually can maneuver a little bit. But it's not a speed demon. And the armor of the tank, well, it's a Panther II chassis that apparently was actually built. The turret is from a Panther II and from a Panther F, and the gun is a long 88 without a muzzle brake. So it's a Frankenstein tank. It's put together from things that we already see in game. And the long 88 at that battle rating for a medium tank is no longer adequate against most opponents, especially with the ammunition. And the same goes for the Tiger II. The hull is and the turret, to the most part, is from a Tiger II Henschel, and the gun, as far as I was told, was actually in trial for trying it out if it fits or if it would work on a tank. And the funny thing is that again, it is a 7.0 tank. In the past, the Panther II was at a battle rating of 6.7. And then we also have to talk about the Horten. And the Horten, well, I guess the plane was built, but it never had some sort of cannons. It just was supposedly to be equipped with bombs, but I'm not quite sure about this. But again, the Horten smells like a paper tank for most people. And the funny thing is, the Horten actually is also not that good. It's not bad, it's unique, and it has a distinct flavor to it, but it's objectively not that good. It's very sluggish, poor acceleration, the wings rip in if you pull too many G's, so you have to really be careful in your maneuvers. You take a lot of damage from just a few 50 cals or cannons, then you're out of control. Again, your wing rips very easily, and then there is your armament. Now in Tank RB, once the complaint was understandable, but then Gaijin removed the HWAP belt, and now we just have an armor piercing belt where it has one HWAP round out of 4 rounds in the belt, so every 4th shell is an HWAP shell. That is now no longer good, especially with the extreme inaccuracy of the guns. And this is just another brick in the wall in the long-term Gaijin history, or tradition rather, of making sure that German planes and German vehicles are not overpowered. Now let me give you some other examples. First of all, certain okayish tanks that bring mobility are made event vehicles so that they can now no longer be implemented in the tech tree. For example, the Packwagen, which is good but also still has simply some trade-offs. Then what about the KPZ-70? It was introduced with a reload of 6 seconds, then after the introduction, shortly after, Gaijin found some new documents, and now we are looking at a 10-second reload. If this is true or not is not the important part. It's the way that it looks, and it's the way that it is such a consistent thing that either it's incompetence in the research department, or it's deliberate made that like that so that people think, oh, finally a good German tank, and then they buy this vehicle for golden eagles, talisman it, and buy some upgrades to have the full nice experience, and then it gets nerfed. The same goes for the Leopard 2K recently, again introduced with a 5-second reload and also a battle rating of 8.7. And yes, I said that this is too much, and in Gaijin's infinite wisdom they double nerfed it. Battle rating increased to 9.0 and reload increase. So while the Panther II is still very nice to use and fun, especially against Soviet vehicles, and also the KPZ or MBT-70 is still usable, it's just the way that it smells like. The same goes, for example, for when the Bf-109 G14 was introduced at, I guess, 5.0. It's the same old story, you know, and I think that is just funny if you look at it. It's just another brick in the wall. So I'm not upset at this, it's just so obvious. And the funny thing is, let's just say Gaijin does that move and takes the Panther II and the 10.5 centimeter Tiger II away from the German tech tree. Will the ones that have it keep it, much like with the SM-79s or the Italian planes in the German tech tree overall, or the very old SB-2M bombers and so forth? Will those who have it keep it? That's the first question. The second one is, what will Germany get as compensation? Because to go directly from the Tiger II with the 88 to a Maus is, well, that's rough. And then also to still remove the Panther completely out of the game after it was once part of the 6.7 lineup, that's just, well, hard, to be honest. And so Germany still for years lack kind of overall a light tank support for the flanks, and now with the introduction of the spotting mechanic, also, well, the support for the information on the battlefield. Overall, Germany just has a stronger and stronger uphill battle. Now I just want to also make you aware of this issue, which is, for example, on the German APHE shells, the extreme shell or fuse sensitivity of 28 millimeters, which cause actual overpenetration. So I hit here another M41 Walker Bulldog. In the previous example, it also didn't die after 2 shots into the tank, and the shell just doesn't go off. I aim for the ammo rack, and it blackens out and vanishes. Good stuff. And if the tank would not be tracked and stuck to the wall, he could traverse and out-traverse before I could reload with my 9.1 seconds reload for an expert crew. And yes, the Panther II and the Tiger II are my most played tanks within War Thunder, period. I just rivaled by the E100 and Maus, so I know how the Germans have their problems served to them. But let's go back into the light tank discussion and overall the problem. The Panther II was a good tank in the past. Now it's nothing special. In fact, I think it's inferior to the most other nations' 7.0 tanks. So it never got compensated for the battle rating increase. It was just ranting and, you know, complaining of supposedly Russian and American and British teams on the forums that made Gaijin to go that way with that nerf in terms of battle rating increase. Meanwhile, tanks like the FE4-202 got a buff after a buff after a buff after a buff. The FE4-202, when it first got into the game at 6.0, if I'm not mistaken, was already an okayish tank. It had troll armor and it had a 20 pounder. Granted, the AP shot to which it was limited in the beginning, wasn't all that convincing, but it was an okayish tank. It was fitting very well into the British meta. And then it got buff after buff after buff in the shape of not just an APDS shell and also a stabilizer, but also as of late the AP buff in conjunction with the introduction of the French tanks. And all that it got was a cosmetic battle rating increase to 6.7, because it still faces a lot of down tiers. The overwhelming games that I played in this tank were down tiers against Tiger 1s and Panthers, which it can lol pen at any distance, and with the stabilizer and the quick reload, you are just in a so much better tank that it is just simply unfair. So the matchmaker is screwed over. There is no balance in the first place. We have no separation of World War II vehicles with inferior technological weapon systems and armor systems, but you have to face with them a complete up tier against a enemy that has so many advantages. And if we look at, for example, the Tiger with the 10.5 centimeter gun, in the description that is in the game, okay, it said that it has some sort of stabilizer and some sort of autoloader, none of which those two things are actually implemented in the game. And Gaijin thinks it's nice to remove this thing. Well, okay, do it, but what do we get as compensation? Will we get a light tank that is not premium, like the RE251? Do we see any sort of compensation in terms of firepower that is better than the not very good Long 88? At this point in time, the Long 88 is not good. You have so many issues with it, it's not even fun. Now, your opinion may vary, and if you think you have other experiences, please let me know in the comment section, but please be fair, be objective, and don't insult anybody. Have a proper discussion and keep calm. Now, one thing that I really have to point out, the best thing in the past that I did was the decision to leave the German nation aside, to not play it, to not play BF-109s, Focke-Wulfs, to not play Tiger 2s and Panthers and Tigers. Occasionally I had one or two battles and I was quickly reminded why I no longer play this nation. It's dead for quite some time. And again, if you look into the history of War Thunder, let's talk about 6.7 while we're at it. Other nations have really, well, conquered this battle rating and made it their playground. And previously Germany was kind of strong, but over the last 2 years we saw the introduction of new premium tanks, of, well, stronger vehicles, new game mechanics and so forth, amongst them being stabilizers and ATGMs and so forth. And Germany has none of that. There is the Stritzwagen 81 at 6.7. There are all the other tanks with the 20-pounder stabilizer and APDS, which is formidable against German tanks. Combine this with their troll armor and you just have better tanks. T29, the IS-6 and the matchmaker in particular are all nails into the German coffin. And yeah, it's just very nice to not play Germany. Now, if you are not convinced by that, hold back your comment, play the German nation at the battle ratings from, well, 4.7 to 7.3, and then tell me after 1 week if it was fun, if it was fair. Let me know your kill to death ratio and your win ratio and your survival rate compared to other nations that you play. Because that is the essential part. Germany is not competitive. Germany got nerfed, battle rating increased, no compensation, and now Gaijin comes along and says, well, we're thinking about, because of quote-unquote historical accuracy, to remove the 10.5 centimeter Tiger 2 and also the Panther 2, and apparently without giving Germany a compensation for that. I think this has never been in the game, that vehicles got removed and no compensation was done. Now, the one hope that I have is that the people that actually have those vehicles can keep it, like we did with the Italian planes in the German tech tree and some other planes that were removed in the past. Now again, I think without further ado, that's it for me today. And think about other nations, how they never got really addressed with their very effective vehicles. For example, the British with their rockets, or the Americans with their rockets in the casserole, because it was a global nerf that also affected the German and the, well, Japanese rockets in their limited casseroles, which were not that, well, impressive in the first place, with maybe the exception of the Werfergranaten, but even they are not that strong anymore, and they are mounted on inferior flight model planes. So yeah, I guess without further ado, that's it for me today. So thanks for watching, thanks for listening. Again, if you want to take part in that discussion, I'm happy to read through your comments, but please stay fair, please stay objective, objectively accurate, stick to the arguments and no insults. And give the video a like if you agree, dislike if you disagree, let me know why, and we will see each other in the next battles.